there's more hazards and kind of bad influences that a kid can encounter with an hour on their smartphone than scary hazards they can encounter on a bike ride in the city for an hour.
As expensive as they are, it's rare to see someone over 16 years old who doesn't have a smartphone. But have we, as parents, researched how smartphones and all the entertainment and information they provide are ruining the lives of our children? Today we interview Brett McCracken about his new book, Scrolling Ourselves to Death, Reclaiming Life in a Digital Age. You will walk away today with new evidence that demands that we as men and leaders of our households take some kind of action and take back lost ground to technology. What can a guy do right now? Listen to this podcast. What does a guy need to do here? Can you give us some high level advice?
Here's something I'll say that we haven't talked about, but I think it's important. I think that dads have to.
Brett, it's great to have you on the show today, all the way down in sunny California. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic. Man, it's just, we need to hit this head on. We need to help men navigate. But before we jump into the topic of today, why don't you give us a little bit of a 30,000-foot view of who Brett McCracken is and things that make you tick, what you love to do, your family, all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I am a writer. I'm a journalist. My whole career has been writing for magazines, websites, books. So that's what I do. That's my professional life. On a personal level, I'm married to my lovely wife, Kira. We've been married for about 13 years. I met her here in Southern California. I'm originally from the Midwest, born and raised in the Midwest, but moved out to California for grad school. I went to Wheaton College for undergrad, which was an amazing experience. Then UCLA for a graduate degree. And then I started working at Biola University, Christian University out here. And I worked there for about 9 years. That's where I met Kira. And now we have 3 kids going on 4. So we have a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and then a baby due to be born in November. So life is full, and we are just bracing ourselves for it to get a lot fuller soon. But it's great. Everything is a blessing, and I'm grateful to be doing what I do. I love what I do. I love getting to help Christians think about culture and cultural trends and forces that are shaping them in culture, including technology, which is what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, it's a fun job, and it's a fun life with my family here. And we're involved with a church that's 2 blocks down the street. So we get to walk to church. It's a neighborhood church. I've served as an elder there, and it's called Southlands Church, Santa Ana, where we live.
Wow, it's really good to have you on the show, man. So let's talk about your book. Honestly, I love the title, and I actually love the cover. Here's the book.
Yeah. Isn't it great? Yeah.
Scrolling Ourselves to Death, Reclaiming Life in a Digital Age. Man, if there is not a book that's appropriate for today like this one, I don't know what it is. I was scrolling through here. I was flipping. I'm an old school guy. I like to actually have paper books. You can see behind me here. So you,
like
in the book, you wrote, "We will scroll ourselves through life, and we will scroll ourselves to death." And then you continue just the next paragraph down. The death march of our scrolling society is not just a metaphor. In many ways, the smartphone is literally killing us. Can you explain that statement?
Yeah, so there's a couple different layers to the meaning of the death in the title, scrolling ourselves to death. There's the actual death that can occur, right? You could be scrolling on your phone while you're driving and get in an accident and die. That happens with increasing frequency. I think distracted driving incidents have now surpassed DUIs, I think, in terms of traffic fatalities. So that's one layer, the literal, you can scroll yourself to death. You could take a selfie at the Grand Canyon and, fall off. But the types of death that we're really getting at in the book are the emotional kind of mental health death, which is well documented in our culture. There's lots of secular research and books that are being published. They are getting at all the kind of things that are going wrong with our mental health because of phone addiction and just life in the digital age. Increased depression, increased anxiety, increased loneliness, all of that. But then there's the like spiritual death, and that's really what we're focusing on in the book. We're arguing that life in the scrolling age and these habits of consuming our attention really 24/7 at every opportunity, there's a spiritual death that is resulting from that. Um, we are losing our time and our attention that we would give to God in things like prayer and just worship. We're losing our presence with other people, including our own families and our local church families, because we're lost in this ether of abstract cyberspace, virtual reality, and our phone just kind of constantly beckons us. And there's a real spiritual kind of atrophying that is happening. So that's the main kind of type of death that we're talking about when we talk about our phones are leading us that way. We're scrolling ourselves to spiritual death.
It's interesting. I was just telling somebody this morning. Romans 3:23 say all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And then Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. I think that's it. And it hit me. Sin kills. Like
Mm-hmm.
it kills us. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we've got to start calling these this phone addictions what they
Mm-hmm.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, any addiction kills you, right? Some of them kill you faster than others. And, cigarettes, alcohol, things like that. But phone addiction is as powerful and as malformative of any addiction. And yet it's kind of a comfortable addiction in our culture. Like probably most of us could be diagnosed as like phone addicts, just by virtue of our inability to resist grabbing for our phone whenever we have like a break moment. That's like addict behavior when you literally can't stop your hand from reaching for your phone whenever it has the opportunity. So I think we need to start elevating kind of technology addiction, phone addiction to that level of concern. Even in church, a lot of Christian churches have like celebrate recovery programs
Mm-hmm.
for a wide variety of addictions. I think we need to start having like celebrate recovery programs in our churches simply for people who are addicted to social media and their phones. And there's things that are on the phone, like pornography, which we already have programs for
Mm-hmm.
that type of addiction, and that's important. But I think there's a spiritual malformation that is happening just by doing anything on your phone too much. Like
Mm-hmm.
even like, and we're on a podcast, so I don't want to knock podcasts, but even like listening to too many podcasts like all day, every day, that's not good for you, because if you're just filling your brain constantly with more and more content, you're just a glutton for digital content, and you're never giving yourself time to synthesize it, to let it turn into nutrition in the way that, just like eating food, right? If you just eat food constantly, but never give your body time for it to kind of turn into nutrition and build muscle and whatnot, you're not going to be, healthy. The same is happening in our cognitive spiritual lives. We're filling our souls with information and content constantly at a pace and to an extent that has never been done in human history. Like we today, humans today consume more information, just a sheer volume of information, than any humans in history have. And there's science that's starting to kind of look at that and show that our brains are changing
Mm-hmm.
because of this. It's unprecedented in human cognitive development. And I think these are all things that should concern us as Christians, because God created us to be good thinkers, to be critical thinkers, that's to be wise, and we're losing those abilities in this overstimulated scrolling age.
Well, it's really interesting. So I think in the church, there are two sins that we don't care about. We just really don't care about gluttony because
Mm-hmm.
nobody ever talks about, now we call it fat shaming. I'm a big guy. We don't talk about gluttony. We just ignore it. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
it's because a lot of the guys in the pulpit are actually overweight guys. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of it. But we also don't talk about, we've accepted the fact that scrolling and smartphones are here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think something's got to happen because there are nefarious things on my smartphone.
Yes.
The smartphone's a tool. And so
Yeah.
you hesitated when you talked about podcasts. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really listen to podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I produce them. I don't have time to do that stuff. When I'm driving my truck, I like to be quiet, silent.
Yeah.
So I think, and here's the bigger question, the bigger thing to me is, and I've had this happen to me. This happened to me. I have my Bible study time in the morning. I have my prayer time
Mm-hmm.
after that. I go to my office, and that phone is a problem. That
Mm-hmm.
phone is a problem. That phone needs to stay in a different room because
Yeah.
it is a problem. So I'm excited for this show just for me as well because
Mm-hmm.
we've navigated from home lines, landlines with a cord.
Right.
It's just we've been through this process. Now we're on the other end, going, man, I can just YouTube a video on how to fly fish. This is
Right.
awesome. But is
Right.
it? Is it?
Is it? Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. No, sometimes I wish we could go back to the landlines and the televisions that are like there's one in the house. It's in a room where everyone has to be in it together in order to watch it. I think I would, being a parent now with little kids, I want that to be the environment my kids grew up in, rather than each of them has their own little mini TV that they take with them wherever they go, and there's no accountability to what they watch, and it becomes this individualistic, consumeristic activity rather than a communal kind of family activity. And then yeah, the landlines, like I know it would be tough for us all collectively as a society to go back to that, but I do wonder if there is some merit to thinking retroactively about kind of more analog technologies. There's things like dumb phones. Have you heard of this? Like, I actually know a lot of 20 somethings, like Gen Z folks, who are choosing to kind of downgrade from like an iPhone to a dumb phone. So it's not quite like a landline with a cord. It's still like a cellular phone, and it can do some things like Google Maps, or there's a few apps that it has. But they are choosing that because they recognize maybe things were better back when our phones didn't do everything we could possibly want to do. Maybe there's
yeah,
there's something good about limitations and not having this kind of like godlike temptation which the iPhone really presents us with.
yeah,
It's this almost like this tree from the Garden of Eden, right? Which presents us with this. It gives us the temptation of godlike omniscience. You
yeah,
can be anywhere you want to be. Godlike knowledge, and godlike power, omnipotence. Like you can do anything. You can order whatever you want on Amazon. You can buy tickets to this thing or that. You can crop yourself in any way you want so that you can present yourself in any way you like. It gives us this illusion of power. And I think a lot of us are just starting to see maybe this is a temptation that's not forming me in good ways. And maybe there's something better, a better way to live within limitations, my creaturely limitations.
well, we have more information at our fingertips than ever in the history of the world,
Hmm.
but truth eludes us.
Yes.
Information and truth are not the same. In
No.
fact, these phones nowadays, like Facebook and these things will see what you're doing and then feed you more of that. So you're only
Right.
getting one side of the story. You're not getting the whole truth. So something has to give. And I just finished this book right here, Dialed In. And in that book, we identified 20 qualifications of a spiritual leader from the pastoral
Hmm.
epistles. And one of those is the word leader, but that word leader is never mentioned by Paul. It's the word manages. It's the
Mm.
Greek word proistemi, and it has several meanings. One of them is to that the man, the leader of the household, is to protect around. So
Mm.
he's the guy that monitors what is allowed into the household. And so
Yeah.
it is really ultimately the man's responsibility to regulate what is
Hmm.
being seen, what messages, what is coming into the household. So that
Yeah.
he can't sit by neutrally and just go, "Hey man, I'm going to be Switzerland here and not do anything." That is
Yeah.
that is wrong. That is sin. That is
Yeah.
poor leadership.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
so
agree.
we need to bring a guy like you in to help us. So
Mm.
this book. So you didn't write the book. It was you wrote uh, two chapters in the book, correct?
Yeah, I wrote two chapters and then co-editor. So me and Ivan Mesa edited the
Yes.
whole volume. Yeah.
And so really cool, really cool. But the thing I like about the book that's fun is you actually wrote a book about a book.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the
hmm
book about the book?
Yeah. So the book about the book in question is Neil Postman's "Amusing Ourselves to Death," which turns 40 this year in 2025. So it came out in 1985, and we thought as a way to kind of mark the 40th anniversary of his book, which has had a lot of influence, not just in Christian circles, but throughout the culture. He was Jewish. He wasn't a Christian. He was a public intellectual at NYU, kind of like an heir to Marshall McLuhan in terms of thinking about media and technology critically and carefully and wisely. So that book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, we think at the Gospel Coalition was just right on the money. It was very prophetic and it predicted a lot of the shape our world has taken in the last over the last 40 years. But it's also dated in some ways. He focuses most of his attention on television, which in the 80s that was the main technological form that was kind of shaping people. And he does a great job showing how television as a technology was changing how we think, how we talk, how how we kind of triage issues in terms of what's important and what's trivial, and the kind of blurring of the lines between information and entertainment,
Mhm.
news and entertainment. So he was ahead of his time with his observations in that book. But in our digital age, in the internet age, the age of scrolling on smartphones, like a lot of what he talked about has just become even more intense. Like now we all carry televisions, if you will, in our pockets everywhere we go. It's all tailored to us. The algorithms kind of, like you were mentioning, it gives us just more of what we already have shown that we
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
It becomes this kind of a weird mirror of our own desire, which is very scary if you think about it. All of us have had those moments, by the way, on your Facebook feed or some feed where you like start to see ads for things and you're like, that's creepy because it knows that I'm tempted by that.
Mhm.
The algorithm knows. So everything Postman was talking about has become even more accelerated and pervasive. And so we thought, let's take his wisdom in amusing ourselves to death, apply it to today's technology, but with a special focus on the church and Christianity and how to think about all of these things from a distinctly Christian point of view. So that's the origin of the book.
Can you just briefly, because I really enjoyed these books and I read one of them about 2 years ago again,
Mhm.
can you briefly touch on Huxley and Orwell's books and how they collaborate or how they
Yeah.
kind of merge into this one?
Yeah, so Postman starts his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, by referencing those two books, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, George Orwell's 1984. And he basically says, look, these were two books that came out earlier in the 20th century, and both of them were dystopian visions of
Hmm.
a future world, kind of warnings about this future world. And 1984 had painted this picture of like we will be oppressed from above, right, by Big Brother, this controlling entity that surveils us and uses technology to basically control us from in a top-down kind of way. Aldous Huxley's book Brave New World was similar but different in an important way. His vision of technological dystopia was more of a bottom up dystopia where it's not government controlling us or imposing things on us. It's us as individuals kind of willingly choosing to kind of plug ourselves into this addictive media
Hmm.
that basically renders us uh, impotent, powerless because we're just consuming. We're just constantly hooked into this drip feed of media like a drug. And what Postman, the point of opening Amusing Ourselves to Death with those two dystopian books is he basically asked the question, who was more correct in predicting the 80s where we are and where he was writing? And he concluded that it was Aldous Huxley.
Agreed.
Um, it was the kind of opting into our own um, impotence because we're just constantly choosing to be amused and entertained, and we're watching television all the time where we could be doing more productive things. And that's the point of amusing ourselves to death. He's challenging people to see how it may feel good to just be in a constant state of amusement with media, but it's actually making you a poorer thinker and a more ineffective human being in the world. And so I think if he was right then, he's so much more right now, because I look at people, myself included, and we go through our lives spending so many hours, wasting so many hours, just like scrolling on our phones, like watching another thing on Netflix, watching another thing on YouTube, TikTok, and we could be doing things out there in the world
Mm-hmm.
productively. We could be present with our families who God has given us to tend and to steward. We could take someone out to coffee and have a human embodied kind of moment with them. Um, Instead, we're choosing to be spectators of other people's lives on social media rather than active participants in our own lives. And that's a big point. One of the authors in our book, Scrolling Ourselves to Death, a guy by the name of Reed Mercer Schuchart, who actually studied under Neil Postman in grad school. So he has a direct connection to Postman. But his chapter, I think it's called something like Embrace Tangible Mission, Not Digital Spectating. And it's a really like fire chapter. Like it's like a Jeremiah of a chapter. Like he does not hold back. And he basically just lays into us and says, most of us are choosing digital spectatorship over tangible mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's calling us to like put your phone down long enough to get your hands in the dirt in whatever local place God has put you in the world. Your household, first and foremost, your city, your community, your church. That's where you can be most effective. That's where you will feel best. You'll feel more joy because God created us to be active and to be building and to be useful in the world. But our phones give us this constant temptation to just be spectators, to just like scroll endlessly and watch this person, look at that influencer. What is Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey doing today? Like it's just this constant temptation to be not present in my own life and instead vicariously living through media. The definition of media, as you know, is like mediating one real thing to you. So there's this barrier, right? Like when things are mediated to us, we're not actually experiencing the real thing. And yet, so much of our lives now are mediated. We go through our lives choosing mediated reality over actual reality. And a good example of that is like when you're in like a beautiful park or like the beach, some beautiful like part of God's creation, and you look around and you see people like looking at their phones instead. Like instead of looking at the real beauty right in front of them, they're choosing the mediated virtual reality that their phone provides. And I shake my head when I see that, but I'd be lying if I said I don't sometimes do that myself. I find myself choosing mediated experience over the real. And I think there's a lot of spiritual poverty that comes with that.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say anything deep there. So I'm taking so many notes. I'm like, I don't even know where to go with this thing, except to
Mm,
say this. So we live in a world. I'm a physical guy,
hmm
a big guy. I played college sports, but I've written
hmm
17 books. So
hmm
I've 18. I don't even know. So I've I've realized growing up through this digital age, intellectualism is king, but and
hmm
physicality is almost frowned upon, right?
hmm
And we need to find a balance between the two. We need to find the balance between comfort and suffering,
hmm
intellectualism and physicality. We need to find
Yeah.
knowledge and truth. And if we're living our lives getting a callus on our thumb from scrolling, this is
hmm
going to create a soft, weak, mentally and physically. You said something way back in your discourse I thought was really powerful.
Yeah, sorry for that
No, no,
10-minute
no. I
discourse.
want you. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I was just. It was my mind was exploding while you were talking. Trying, but you said it renders us impotent.
Yeah.
It renders us impotent, and in the book, it's mentioned all throughout the book. But when you hear the phrase being rendered impotent,
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
tell me what pops to your mind right now? What do you think of when you hear rendering impotent? What does that mean to you when you hear that?
That's a great question. What pops to mind is like this phenomenon in the social media age where we're confronted all day every day with like bad news of like an injustice happening on this side of the country and a calamity happening on that side of the world. And a lot of it we rightly experience with emotion. Like we want to be able to do something about it because God wired us that way. When we see injustice, we naturally want to do something about it. When we see suffering, we want to be able to help. But on social media and when we're just filtering all of this through a phone, you can't really take action on anything. All you can do is be aware, and we're frustrated by our impotence, right? Like we want to be able to do something to help, but most of the time we can just get mad.
Yeah.
Like we can kind of feel ourselves, the outrage is building. Maybe we can like send money, to help a situation or pray. Those are good things that you can do. But I think that God created us to be able to take tangible action whenever our brains are confronted with a problem. We God made us to be problem solvers, right? From the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, that was Adam and Eve's task. Like, tend the garden, be people who bring order to the chaos around you. And that's what every human ever since, that's been our wiring. We are created to be orderers of chaos in whatever stretch of the garden, so to speak, God has placed us in. And so we are at our best and we flourish in life when we do that work. When me, as Brett McCracken in Santa Ana, California, I see my local world as a garden that I can tend. My
Mhm.
family, my household, my church, my city, and I take tangible steps to bring order to that chaos, right? Whether it's the chaos of changing my kids' diapers or making dinner for them, or the chaos of people in my church who are struggling in certain areas, and I can kind of speak into that and help them bring order to that. Or, bigger picture societal chaos of, orphans in our city who need resources and help, or homeless problems or things like that. Like, everyone in any place in the world, if you just look close enough in your own backyard, you can find plenty of genres of chaos, so to speak, to do that ordering work. But what the phone tempts us to do is to be everywhere else but where we are. Like, the virtual world is constantly pulling us away from the tangible world in our own backyard. And I think most of us exert a lot more mental energy, like getting outraged by national issues and politics that we come across on our phones, than things in our own neighborhood and our own family that we're not aware of, that we should be aware of and taking action on. So another long answer to
No,
your
no, no.
question, but
You have your mind is a lot more intellectual than mine, and I really enjoy that. It's different than me, and so you process better, more systematically. I'm more gut level, so this is really good for me. I really appreciate this. So don't. I want you to do this. So when you were talking, started thinking about this.
mhm,
I would. The only thing I would add is I think that men inherently gravitate toward problem solving, and women inherently gravitate towards processing and
mm,
finding the problem. So they find it, discover
mhm,
it, men fix it.
yeah,
That's why women
yeah,
always tell their husbands, I'm going to tell you something, but don't try to fix it. And that's why men tell
mm,
their wives, stop nagging me about what I need to do. Because but men inherently, which is our audience,
mhm,
we
yeah,
want to bring order out of chaos. That was a
yeah,
beautiful statement that you made. And then as
yeah,
you tied in this rendering of impotence, it hit me.
Mm-hmm.
It just hit me, and I may have this wrong, but I think it was Seligman who did a study on rhesus monkeys, and he put them into a cage and he shocked them.
Mm-hmm.
And for one group, he would allow them to get out if they pressed a lever. For another group, he wouldn't allow them to get out. Martin Seligman. I think that's who it was, man. I'm going back way back to college.
That sounds right to me. I'm familiar with that.
I think it is. And then what happened with the monkeys that couldn't get out of the cage, they just kept getting shocked. They just laid down and took it. And he labeled it learned helplessness.
Yeah.
And people just kind of tap out and they give up. And when you talk about rendering one impotent, because you're seeing a problem as a man, you can't bring order to chaos because it's on a scroll. There's this sense of learned helplessness. And I'm getting to something here. And here's my question. How has this idea of you and I are putting these words in here, rendering one impotent or learned helplessness or not being able to bring order out of chaos, how has this created within us mental unhealth?
Yeah. I think it's because we were created by a good genius creator to have a pretty direct, even correlation between information about a broken world and action that we can take to bring order and health. That's the chapter that I write in the book. It's all about Neil Postman had this idea of the information action ratio, and it was just a few paragraphs in Amusing Ourselves to Death, but it stuck with me. And so when we put together this book, Scrolling Ourselves to Death, I was like, I want to write the chapter doing a deep dive into the idea of the information action ratio. And essentially it's kind of what we've been talking about. Like when we live in this digital world where we're bombarded with way more information than humans have ever had to like cognitively process, the ratio is out of whack. Like we have way more information and only a tiny fraction of it can we do anything tangibly about. And I think that's what's causing this source of mental unhealth. No wonder we feel anxious. No wonder we feel just kind of depressed and hopeless and kind of resigned. This learned helplessness, to use your really good phrase. When you see a world's worth of burdens and a world's worth of problems every day of the week online, you start to feel numb. Almost like it doesn't really register as a problem anymore because there's just the sheer amount of it is overwhelming. Yeah. I know I can't do anything about it, and yet it still affects us because we're emotional creatures. And so the grief kind of compounds, and the stress makes us more and more anxious, and more outraged. I think anger and outrage is also part of that mental health crisis and I know some people in my life who I would call very online. They spend too much time online, to be honest. And I've noticed them become angrier and angrier. Just their disposition, their posture in life is not one of joy. It's one of constant anger, like rage against politicians they don't like, against, this group of people that they don't like. And so I think that's why we have this mental health breakdown in our culture. There's just too much information, too much bad news, too much chaos that we can't order. And we were never created to bear the weight of all of that. I think God created us with a much more modest mission to kind of order chaos in some small stretch of the world that he places us in sovereignly. And a very small percentage of us will have bigger influence, beyond that. Most of us will be like the faithful farmer, in some remote part of South Dakota who raises 8 kids and is a good dad and a good husband and a good farmer and goes to church. No one ever knows his name. He doesn't have influence beyond the little town where he lives. But that's a life well lived. That is what God created us to do. And I think most of us men probably need to let go of that kind of unhealthy draw towards celebrity or kind of virtual influence, and take more satisfaction in the tangible, beautiful influence we can have in a very local spot of the world, where God has us. I know the older I get, as a dad, I have 3 kids going on 4, and I'm someone I write books, and I'm on podcasts, and God has given me a platform to influence people beyond my local community, and I'm very grateful for that. But honestly, the older I get, the more joy I find in the just like wrestling with my kids when they get home from school, reading them books, like telling them stories when they're going to bed, making dinner for them, like serving my family. I take so much joy in that. Almost, it sounds weird, but I almost get more joy from that than I do from like knowing people are reading my books, in
Hmm.
various parts of the world. I love that and I'm grateful for that. But I think God created us to be local people who like are most at peace and most joyful and most effective in human to human relationship, where we are seen and known in deep ways. You get what I'm saying. I don't need to belabor the point.
Yeah.
I'm rambling, but
Well,
yeah,
Jesus wasn't a mega church pastor. Jesus didn't
that's
write a
right.
book. Jesus
Yeah,
didn't go without more than 80 miles from his home. It might
yeah,
not even have been 80.
yeah.
Jesus didn't do any of these things, right? Jesus stopped and hugged the children. And I think, part of our vision with Men in the Arena is to build a growing army of men who are becoming their best version in Christ,
Mm,
changing their world. We
yeah,
could almost change that last line to bringing order out of their chaos, making order
mm,
out of their chaotic world. So when a man comes in
yeah.
and he takes his world, his sphere,
Hmm.
it may be a family of 5 in a farm in Mattoon, Illinois,
Hmm.
which I'm
Hmm.
actually going there in a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
That area, and changing that world, and that's what
Mm,
we're talking about here. So, and I
yeah.
think, man, I'm just so frustrated with technology. Is it wrong to view it as a necessary evil? Like,
Mm,
what is your thought about that?
hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that as Christians, we shouldn't have a posture of like resignation with technology. Like, if we if we come to the conclusion that certain forms of technology are so bad and can tempt us in such powerful ways in negative directions,
Mhm.
we can't just respond by shrugging our shoulders and saying, well, we can't live without it, so let's just
100%.
let I think we can take action. It's the whole like disempowered learned helplessness mentality. Like,
Mhm.
we actually can change things if we have the will to do it, and we kind of collectively agree this is something we want to change. So, I mean, in some ways, I think it's true that like we can't put the genie back in the bottle with the internet and
Mhm.
like these new technologies. I don't think it's realistic to expect that the world is just gonna one day decide to go back 40 years technologically. Not gonna happen. But in our own individual families and in our communities, our churches, I think we can choose to use these technologies less than we are. Um, One thing that I think is worth experimenting with, if you're a Christian parent, maybe like band together with other Christian parents in your church community and come up with like shared convictions around smartphones. Like,
Mhm.
we're all gonna agree not to give our kids a smartphone until they're 18. That's hard to do when it's just your family.
Yep.
Your kid is gonna feel like, I'm such an alien that no one else in my school does this. But if you band together with other families who have shared convictions about this and see all the bad that can come from it, I think it's going to become easier for your kids to kind of see, oh, my friends at church my age, their parents also have these restrictions. So I think we're going to have to like individually and collectively decide, we're not just going to let this happen. We're not just going to be resigned to this. We're going to make some changes. It's going to start with our own lives and our own habits, but then let's kind of build it out from there in terms of building churches, building institutions that actually are showing the world other ways to live. Um, yeah.
So, Brett, here's the deal. Daniel, help me here. In what world does a parent give a kid an $800? How much are iPhones? 800, 1200? In what world does any parent give a kid under 18 a $1,200 anything? I mean,
I
come
know.
on. This
I
is
know.
ridiculous. These are middle
It,
class, blue collar people. I mean,
hmm
I see kids walking around and I know their families, they're broke. They're living in a trailer. A kid's got a $1,200, porn library in his hand. He's got a $1,200,
Yeah.
life emotion altering rectangular lit up device in his hand. It just
Yeah.
at some point we have to, and here's the deal, Brett, you know this. You're an intellectual guy, you're an educated guy. The church is the change agent for society. The church has
hmm
to stop playing along with this garbage. I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I've got a smartphone, I'm looking at it right now. But
hmm
we've got to build limitations. Every guy I've interviewed on our podcast who's talked about digital stuff, and we had a guy just
hmm
last week, actually, they've all
hmm
said no kid should have a smartphone before 16. And I would
Yeah.
say, I mean, this is ridiculous, man. If you're a man
Yeah.
listening to this, all you're doing is building a spoiled child who's going to have
hmm
intellectual, mental unhealth
Mm.
because you gave him something he wasn't ready for. I mean, my
Yeah.
kids got
Yeah.
crappy cars when they turned 16 that their grandparents gave them, and I made them
hmm
get jobs to pay for their insurance because I'm not paying for that stuff. I didn't. It's not my
Yeah.
car. I'm
Yep.
just I'm ranting here a little bit, but
No, I love it. I love it. I love it.
want to talk about something because I don't feel like we've done justice on this podcast to really address head on
hmm
the emotional, the mental unhealth we're seeing in our kids. I've never before, I've been doing ministry, full time ministries for 35 years. I've
hmm
never seen so much. I mean, and when I was growing up, and when I even 10 years ago, people got stressed out. Hey, pray for me. I'm stressed out. But now they've got this disease called anxiety.
Yeah.
And then this loneliness epidemic. On page 164 in your chapter, you wrote, I'm convinced this dynamic is one of the major sources of anxiety and mental health in today's information age. Can you talk to these guys, beg
Mm.
these guys? I mean, appeal to their intellect. I don't care. But let's talk about what these smartphones are actually doing to the mental health of our children.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm just going to give a short answer because I've been giving the long answers.
Oh, this one's going to come in hard and fast. I have a feeling.
Well, it's going to come in the form of a recommendation of another person's book.
Okay.
Jonathan Haidt, his book, The Anxious Generation. I
Oh,
don't know if
somebody
you've,
told me about the book this morning.
yeah. He is a great NYU. These are all public intellectuals at NYU, but he has this book that basically presents a very compelling case with statistics and studies arguing that the decline in youth mental health, which is well documented, is very tied to and stems from their activity on smartphones. And I think every parent, every dad needs to read that book and just kind of take it as a sober warning that, like, by giving your kid a phone, you're literally giving them a dangerous weapon that is going to lead to unhealth. And so it's a sobering read. And the thesis of that book, which I find really memorable and helpful, is this. He says, we've overprotected kids in the real world, but we've underprotected kids in the virtual world. So basically, he's saying we don't do our kids favors by being helicopter parents and not letting them ride their bikes or like play on jungle gyms. Like, they actually need that for their development. They need to take risks physically out in the real world. So you're not helping your kids by overprotecting them in the real world. But we tend to think that if we give their kid a phone and let them go in their bedroom, that that's just fine and they're going to be safe. At least they're not breaking their arm on a playground. They're in their phone, they're in their room playing computer games and doing whatever they're doing on their phone. And Jonathan Haidt is saying, actually, we are underprotecting them in the virtual world when we are hands off. Anything goes with digital technology. That's actually where they are getting into serious trouble. Most teenagers are not doing good things on their phones when they're in the privacy of their bedroom.
No.
And every parent thinks their kid is like an angel, and we don't like to think, oh, little Johnny is, he's just doing innocent things. But I guarantee, like, your kid is not doing good things with that phone in the privacy of their bedroom. And so if we think it's irresponsible to like tell your kid, hey, get on your bike and ride a mile to the grocery store to pick up something that I need, if we think that's irresponsible, which it isn't, I think that's actually a fine thing to do.
100%.
Why do we think it's responsible to just say, okay, take your smartphone and go do with it what you want for an hour in your bedroom? That's actually what we need to be more worried about. There's more hazards and kind of bad influences that a kid can encounter with an hour on their smartphone than scary hazards they can encounter on a bike ride in the city for an hour. So anyway, Jonathan Haidt, Anxious Generation. That's what I would recommend every man listening to this reads.
We're going to get him on the podcast.
You should.
It doesn't matter to me, but is he a believer?
He is not. I think he's also Jewish, like Postman, but he does a lot of conversations. Like he spoke at Biola University a couple of years ago. So he's very friendly with evangelicals.
He's speaking the truth in an empirical way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's, Brett, this has been, man, I'm loving our conversation. I got to dial it down here for a second. Okay, let's go back to dad.
Yeah.
So he's going to be the meanest dad in the world. He's going to regulate his kid's phone. He's going to get him a flip phone or whatever till they're 18. And then when they can afford to buy their own phone because they have a JOB, they can get their $1,200. Gosh, $1,200?
Depending on the memory size.
Man, I'll tell you what. I'll stick with my iPhone 11. I don't know. Anyway, okay, let's do this. You're in the bubble. You're an author. You wrote a book. Scrolling ourselves to death. What can a guy do right now, listen to this podcast, to build a collaboration of other men in his community to maybe it's going to be called the meanest dads in the world. I don't know. What does a guy need to do here? Can you give us some high level advice?
Yeah, here's something I'll say that we haven't talked about, but I think it's important. I think that dads have to start with their own behavior, because so much in parenting is caught, not taught. So you can tell your kids all day, like, get on your phone less, go outside and play. But if they see dad constantly scrolling on his own phone, it's just going to feel hypocritical, and they're actually going to learn more about their desire and their value for the smartphone by seeing that dad never leaves it out of his sight, So I think that that's something I'm trying to like be more mindful of as a dad. Whenever I'm around my kids, I try my hardest just to not have my phone with me. And I fail a lot, because it is so hard to not be on your phone for different practical reasons in life. But I'm cognizant of the fact that my kids are watching me, and they're going to grow up seeing dad using this iPhone all the time. And so of course they're going to want one. And when it comes time when they're a teenager and they ask for one and I tell them no, how am I going to tell them no when I've lived my whole life in front of them as this being like a huge important part of my life? So I would just say, if you're a Christian dad, in your community of other Christian dads, like, start with your own behavior and commit to holding each other accountable to being a little bit less on your phone. Like, go for an hour stretch each day without your device. Like, something practical that I recommend, that's kind of two birds with one stone. It's like when you exercise, like when you go on a run or even just like a walk in your neighborhood, don't bring your phone. Like, just let that be a stretch of your day where you're not with your phone. Instead, use that time to just think and to process and to pray and to be with the Lord, and try to like scale up, try to build in more times like that in your day where you kind of model for your family that it's possible to live without your phone in your pocket, going with you at every moment. Another thing that I have done that I try to do every day. It doesn't happen every day, but I start my day with an hour of unmediated time. So my phone is in another room, and I have my breakfast. I do my Bible reading. I sit in this chair in my living room with my kids watching me, which is an important. I do that
Mm-hmm.
intentionally,
Yep.
and I read a physical book. My phone is nowhere in sight, and so my kids see me doing that, and I hope that they're picking something up, right? Like they're catching something where dad has this habit of starting his day reading his Bible, like sitting in that chair. His eyes are closed sometimes, meaning he's praying. I'm reading other books, so I try to read like 10 pages of another book. Again, I can't do that every day because life is crazy. Parenting little children, I see you. If you're a dad of young kids, I feel your pain. sometimes it's
You're in the stress bubble, buddy.
sometimes it's all you can do to like get them fed and get them out the door for school. And it's only on the days when everything works out that I get to do this routine of like Bible, prayer, reading. But all that to say, I just think of ways to create habits like that in your life where you're modeling non-phone centric behavior, being out in God's creation, going on phone-free runs and walks, um, being reading books, reading the Bible, praying, all of those things with your phone like literally in another room, so
Mm-hmm.
you're not tempted to like start scrolling, midway through your prayer time or whatever. So that's what I would say
That's so
as
good,
a
man.
starting point.
I mean, I would just encourage you, man. That Bible thing, it's not, don't compromise on it. You got to do it every day. Just let them see it.
Yeah.
I've been doing
Mm,
it for, anyway. Okay.
yeah.
So I'll tell you this as we close up. So I want just one more thing to add to your list of, put the phone away and then,
Hmm.
monitor your own behavior. I think the other thing is this: listen, bro, you don't have to be available 24/7.
Yeah.
Like generations have lived and
Yes.
thrived without you being available on your
Yeah.
iPhone. Find my iPhone. It's okay. People are going
Yeah.
to survive. I just had John Eldridge on our podcast. He wrote a book called Experiencing Jesus Really, where he went
Hmm.
and researched all the mystics. You might like this book. It's a good book. But
Oh, I
he
love
said
John
he
Eldridge. Yeah.
explained over and over again. His repeater throughout the book is, we live in a generation that is being discipled by the internet.
Yes.
And man, I think that's something we need to check. I mean, how much time
Yes.
are we spending with Jesus versus, our Siri? Do we worship Siri more than Jesus? I mean, let's look at this, guys. We need to really look at this
Mm,
and ask some hard questions. And I'll just tell you right now, Brett, I'm you got me fired up. And I
mm,
realized, you know what I've been doing? I've been taking my phone. I leave my phone at night in the bathroom where I sleep in the bedroom,
mhm,
and it's in the
mhm.
bathroom. I take it off the phone and bring it down to the living room where I read my Bible, and I'm reading a couple books right now. One by Max Lucado, Tame Every Thought, and reading through the Bible and journaling and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm going to commit right now. I'm going to leave that phone up there till I'm done with that because it
I
has
think
become a
you
distraction.
yeah, I think you'll find that habit really helps, and it's hard at first, but like any habit, it gets easier, once you start normalizing it. I think that's a good move.
And here's the other thing, man. This podcast is not about me as a super Christian or anything. It's me as a dude walking with dudes, maybe just a little bit
Yes.
ahead of these guys, but going, man, that really okay. That was good
Mm.
stuff. Hey, let's do this, man. Let's. This is a great book, man. I would buy that book for the cover right there. I mean, that book is a great book, and you write
Yeah.
the introduction. How can we follow you? What you're doing? I'm sure the book is on Amazon. Don't use your
Yep.
smartphone to use it to get it. I'm just kidding.
Mm.
How do we connect with
Go to a physical bookstore. Oh wait,
you?
do those exist anymore? I don't know. Yeah, you can follow my writing at the Gospel Coalition. That's where I do the majority of my like article writing is there. Other than that, Amazon has all of my books. So if you just find Brett McCracken on Amazon, you can check out all of my books.
Man, it's been so good having you on the show. I need to get you back on because I think there's a lot more for us to dig into. If you have a
Yeah,
book that you think would relate to the men
yeah.
living in your bubble, please let me know.
Mm,
I'd love to have you on, Brett, anytime.
cool. Thank you so much, Jim.
God bless you, man.
Thanks so much.
Make sure, guys, if you are listening to this podcast right now, but you have not subscribed, which a lot of people do, they listen without subscribing, please go and follow this podcast. It helps us climb the charts. It helps us to get our way to number 1 on iTunes and to impact more and more men for Christ. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. Be wise about tech. And be a man.